Hey, 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 chica! Welcome to the Lovelda Show Women of Power podcast, the show where women share their personal power tools, the techniques, strategies, and ways of being which have enabled their business and life success. I'm your host, Lovelda Vincenzi, a female speaker mentor, speaker, and event host on a mission to unleash authentic, powerful female voices onto the world. In today's episode, we will be uncovering the power tools of Tahlia Gray. Tahlia is the founder of Share Chemistry, an empowering hosiery brand specializing in tights for women of all shades of brown. Born in Australia, of Jamaican heritage, she is passionate about challenging traditional beauty standards and helping women reach their potential. Cited by the Financial Times as the entrepreneur who is addressing the woefully underrepresented hosiery market, and by Grazia as leading the charge for a more inclusive fashion, Tahlia is galvanized by the acute need to create more diverse perception of beauty. She has built Share Chemistry from the ground up by encouraging women to feel confident and gorgeous in their own skin. Tahlia's passion for empowering women can be tracked back to her early career working as a talent development recruitment specialist at companies such as Linklaters, Morgan Stanley, and UBS AG. In her previous roles, she spent a significant amount of time developing high performance and diversity programs that helped employees from the graduate level all the way up to the managing director achieve their potential. As a talent development strategist turned fashion entrepreneur, Tahlia has developed a distinctive point of view on brand strategy and capturing the story behind products and the women who wear them. Having lived in cities from Sydney, London, New York to Santander, Brazil, she aspires to create a global community that lives, models, and advocates for diversity. Folks, it turns out I have actually met my doppelganger, as it's quite insane how similar my story and Tahlia's story are in terms of our upbringing, like minus the bit about a hosiery brand, because I just don't have one of those. In this episode, we will be talking about diversity, but from the unique perspective of having grown up from really diverse cultures and what diversity looks like and means to us. We'll also be talking about what it takes to start a product-based business. And this is yet another one of those giggle-filled episodes. So if you need to grab something to stop you from peeing your pants, then I suggest you do that now. So remember that all of the links shared in this show can be found in the show notes. And the only way to ensure that you get your regular fix of this show is to, well, hit that subscribe button right now to make sure that you get updates as soon as a new show is added. That is more than enough from me for now. So let's go talk to my doppelganger. Hey, 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 chicas. Welcome to the Lovelda Show Women of Power podcast. Dun, dun, dun. Oh my gosh, we have like international creativity going on here today. I don't know why I use the word creativity. What I mean is like an international mix mash. When you take like two people's passions that kind of accidentally come together, but kind of come together in a cool way. So my guest today, I actually met her years ago, like years and years ago when she was starting her business. And I reconnected with her recently because she put a picture on her Instagram of her and it said like she was in Papua New Guinea. Well, she wasn't literally in Papua New Guinea at the point she put the picture, but that's where the photo was taken. Mm-hmm. And I was like, girl, please, you know, I grew up there. Yeah, folks, that's where I grew up from like ages. I was in Papua New Guinea from like when I was 5 to about 16. My childhood was there. People don't be going there from this side of the world. She lives in the UK. So I was kind of like, girl, what you doing there? So we had a really good chat. Turns out she'd been all kinds of places I've been with similar kind of passions. So we had to get her on the show today to talk about what she'd been up to. And this one's going to be an amazing show because it just is. Welcome my guest today, Tahlia Gray.
Ooh, I love the intro. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here and kind of serendipitous how this all came about.
Do you know what? It's the power of connection, right? Sometimes you just connect with people. You don't even know how. Like I found her business card.
That's crazy. Literally from like my first ever business card, old logo, old telephone number, like everything. But it was special that you had it still.
Girl, I think it's still here. I should have put it here so I could show people, like, here it is. Back in time. You're like throwback moments, right? Like, here is the old card, like the
Yeah.
original card.
Yeah.
So you had quite an international upbringing as well, because, girl, you was born in Australia?
Yeah, I know. It's kind of my little party trick that I bring out of the bag from time to time. And people are like, what? Black people live there? And I'm like, yeah, here I am. Hey. Yeah, so I guess similarly to you, I grew up in Australia, was born there and came to London when I was 15.
Do you know what? You're like a twin. I mean, I know you already have a twin, but you're like a twin, like twin from like another mother. Like, honestly, our upbringings are so ridiculously similar. It's just kind of crazy because you were also passionate about diversity. I'm like, girl, what are you like twinning me? What's going on here?
Yeah. And I guess that came about because I've thought a lot about this over the years and why I come to be so passionate. And I guess like growing up in Sydney where I didn't have access to, you know, diverse images and diverse like people in the media, although weirdly my family and the people around me were very positive role models, and doing really well for themselves and Black in Australia. So I did actually have immediate role models around me throughout my whole childhood. However, I never saw those people represented on the mainstream stage or in the media. And I'm like, but I know those people and I know that they exist because I see them every day. However, why is it that I'm not seeing this as a normal, as a stereotype? And I guess what really shook me, because I think in Australia it's acceptable, you know, but when I came to London, I was like, but now there's more of us and I'm still not seeing this. And I think that's just unacceptable, you know?
I mean, it's crazy. Mine was almost the opposite. I kind of came from a cultural background with it. So because I was in Papua New Guinea, I was at international school. So I was used to seeing, and you know, I'm in a country that's predominantly Black. So like the TV thing was never going to strike me because it was just like, you know, Black people on the telly all the time. So that didn't really strike me so much. But it was more that I grew up with such an international background. So sometimes my friends were from all over the place, like from the US, from Australia, from various different parts of Asia. And so when I'd go over to their houses, you know, it was just normal to me to expect things to be different, right? So I didn't go over with any anticipation. I always used to go over with a really open mind about how their household would be run and what type of food they'd eat and how they decorate and, you know, what their parenting styles would be, because I was just used to, I'd go to somebody's home and it was going to be a different cultural experience because it always was. And then I had like reverse culture shock. You know, like, I actually spoke to my previous guest also had reverse culture shock. I'm calling it a thing because people normally think of culture shock as you're used to being in a developed country and then you go to a developing country and it's like a bit of a culture shock because sometimes the power isn't on. Yes, I grew up with power cuts and all of that nonsense, right? We used to be sent home from school because it was like no power. So it's like, yeah, we're closing the school for the day. Mom, come pick me up, you know? You know, it was that sort of thing. But when I moved here, you would think like when I moved the other way around, my culture shock was, what do you mean you've never traveled? So wait, you lived in this town like your whole life. And everybody, you know, everything I did was kind of different and awkward. And like the first time I realized there was something different is I remember the first school I went to when we moved, and we're sitting in the principal's office as my parents are like talking to the principal about, you know, enrolling their girls in this school. And we were going to be the first Black kids at this school. So it was a thing. Like, since then, there's been loads of them. But like, this wasn't even that long ago. This was like 1996. Right? You know, we're not talking that long ago.
Yeah.
You know, it was a while for you millennials. Like it was a while, like back in the old days. But, you know, it wasn't that kind of old days. And in the background I grew up in, it was normal to see like diversity. So it kind of struck me that we're here having this conversation in the principal's office about the principal looking out for us just to make sure we'd be okay. And I was like, that's kind of odd, right? So it's the that was the first time I had any real experience of, oh shoot. Like, I mean, I grew up in a bubble. Like, as far as I was concerned, it was normal to have such an open mind, and it was normal to travel, and it was normal to have friends from all of these different cultural backgrounds. And now I'm like the only Black kid in a school full of you know, people who've been raised in the same town and may go on one holiday to the same area every single year, which is like the total opposite of me, total opposite of where I came from. So it took me a moment to kind of get used to, oh, I'm in like a single culture right now. Oh. So when I'm talking about, y'all just don't understand what I mean with these different views and perspectives because it's never been in your face before. So I think I always saw diversity as like, you know, to me, I look at it and I go, well, it's not really a cultural thing. It's not a color thing for me. It's not a background thing. It's not a, you know, your set, you know, what your gender is type thing. It's just a blend of opinions and perspectives that allow us to cohabit better. Like, that's how I see it. I just simplified it to that. So when I'm looking at this, I'm going, oh, it's y'all all think the same. I think that's what got me. Oh, it's like, y'all all think the same. And I can accept a different thinking, but right now you're imposing that on me because that's the only thinking that you've got because you're around people who all think the same as you.
Yeah.
So I get it, girl, when you're like looking at the cultural element of things and then kind of looking at how that makes things different. But you're doing, your business is not, well, it's kind of cultural, but not really. It's kind of a little bit kind of culturally diverse, but not really. So how did you get into your business, Share Chemistry? What was it that inspired you?
Yeah, well, I guess when I look back, it was kind of steps along the way. And I think coming to London was one of them. But after living in London for a while, going to university in Birmingham, then I lived for 10 months in Brazil, and then came back and then went to New York to live for a year.
Of course.
And so the idea for Sheer Chemistry came about while I was in New York, and I was working in the corporate world, trying to live my best life. But one of the things that I always wanted, but could never find, was just tights that match my skin tone. And I guess, you know, trying to look the part while you're kind of, you know, living this Sex in the City or, you know, on a poor man's budget. You know, I just wanted simple, because even things like having access to hair products and on the high street, and having access to, you know, full ranges of makeup. So this was 2011 to 2012. And back then we didn't have Fenty, you know, and we did, like, going to America and having, you know, a free-for-all was a big deal because we couldn't go to Boots and buy hair stuff.
No, it just didn't exist.
In 2011, that didn't exist. And yes, it has progressed now. But yeah, so things like that really excited me about being in New York and just having access to normal stuff that I should see everywhere. So I assumed that tights would also fit into that category of just having access finally, because there's a lot of Black women, there's a lot of women of color. So why should it be a problem? So yeah, I kind of naively walked into department stores and kind of demanded this product. Where can I find my tights? Where? Please show me. And every time I just got this puzzled look, like, what? You want black tights? You want fairly black tights? And I'm like, no, I want my brown tights. And I always just got met by this, like, what do you mean?
Confused look.
Yeah, you've got nude and this is where it is. And so, you know, always in like department stores, the lighting's a bit like weird and dim, so you can be persuaded to think that this nude is actually not that bad. It's not that bad. It kind of, surely. And so then you buy that. Well, I would buy them, take them home, put them on, and then I would go out in broad daylight and then look down and be like, oh. No. These are not working. Then think they can't be that bad. But then throughout the day, you're consciously feeling that people are looking at your legs, because they are. and
not for the right reasons. Not because they're like, damn, look at them legs.
No, because
they're like, what's going on there?
Yeah, because they look like prosthetics, and your legs are discolored. You look awkward. And so at some point I would take them off. And so this would become a a regular thing where I would give them a chance, and just they would all fail miserably. And, you know, I would get into conversations with people about their experiences with tights and how they made them feel. And it was always such an emotionally charged conversation, which I felt was quite interesting because I was emotional about it, but I didn't know why, like the undertones of it, and why it was so important, and why no one had actually solved this problem. And why I was getting so emotional, and, you know,
why am I getting so wound up about it?
You know, and so was everyone else. So I thought, you know what, my first instinct was kind of to write an angry letter to these department stores and
Make them
demand,
fix it.
yeah. But then I was like, but who am I, number one, who am I writing to? And number two, what do I want them to do? And are they equipped to do anything that's useful for me? And I kind of came to the conclusion that even if I did write this letter, they wanted to help, they're not really in a position to help, because let's just assume that I'm writing to, you know, a middle-aged white man, and he's like, okay, we'll just make some brown tights.
Not fully having a full appreciation of different tonalities and,
Yeah.
you know, yeah, got you.
So he could never solve the problem, even if he was willing to. So I thought, instead of placing that on someone else, why don't I just take that ownership of myself and do something for myself and for ourselves? Because I feel like I'm in a unique position to do something meaningful and useful, and actually change the game. So yeah, I did.
I love that. Do you know, because often I love that thought process that you went through, which was, let's just assume they actually want to help. Can they? Are they actually equipped to do this? And is this going to get me the result that I really want in a way that's going to satisfy me? Because they'll just go, you know,
Yeah,
pick a brown and just, you know, a dark brown, a middle color, because that's what they do, like dark middle, you know, pick a color and then away we go. So you basically set off to do for hosiery what Rihanna set off to do for makeup.
Yes.
Before Rihanna thought of the idea. She came first, by the way.
Yeah,
Tahlia was there before Rihanna.
Exactly. So sometimes I say, you know, I inspired Rihanna. Like, so I don't know if she knows this, but yeah, let's just keep that story going.
Yeah, I'm there with you. I mean, she must have spotted something on Instagram and then thought, do you know what? This woman was angry about tights. I'm angry about my makeup right now. I'm sick of mixing tones. I mean, her makeup is good. I don't know why I'm doing a Rihanna shout out, but like, it's really good. I'm totally down with it. So, okay. So starting a service-based industry, business in service-based industry is one thing. But you decided you wanted to start a hosiery-based business, which is product. And let's face it, when you're going after the market of solving the color tone hosiery challenge, that's what I'm going to call it. There are so many tones of brown, so many tones, that you're not talking about a single product where it's like, let me get a perfume out and be done with it. Actually, that one idea is multiple SKUs. Technical term. I learned that one. Technical term. Yeah, I could go there, girl.
I'm impressed.
You're impressed, right? See, things you don't know about Lovelda. Multi-talented, okay? So how did you go about starting? Because you've got production, and it's a whole different world with a whole different language. Was that not intimidating?
I think what was on my side is my naivety. And I actually think that was a blessing. It was a real blessing, because had I known what I know now, I probably wouldn't have started. But I guess every step of the way I was learning, and I didn't think it could possibly be that hard. So the attitude that I came in with it is, how hard could it be? So I was very kind of, I wasn't really intimidated by the task, which was really a lot bigger than I even imagined. But because I didn't think it would be hard or long, I just thought, okay, well, let's just start with step one. Let's go.
Because I
And
remember when I met you, I thought, this girl is brave. I'm like, I ain't going to tell her this is a big, long journey. I am not going to be that person because them tights sound like a good idea.
yeah,
Like, I
yeah,
am totally down with it. But you always did have that, like, just go for it attitude. And I thought, she must know something I don't. Like, the way
yeah.
you were going about it was like, yeah, how difficult can
No,
it be?
honestly, and I that's how I honestly felt. I wasn't I didn't find the process daunting, and actually, I found it quite a fun experiment and exploration. And I guess growing up all over the place, the sense of adventure was what pulled me in. And so I thought, how can I do this? And I guess that whole kind of big question was a fun exploration, because anything's possible and there's no kind of rules, there's no limits. I just make it up as I go.
Surely, though, there must have been moments where you thought, what the heck am I thinking? Like,
Yeah,
was
yeah.
there a low point where you thought, maybe this isn't such a good idea, or were you always just pulled forward by the excitement of it?
There was a low point, and I guess I'll start by what I started with first, and that was the shade. So I thought, what reference point do I have available to me that would allow me to create these shades without having to consult experts?
Mm-hmm.
So although Fenty wasn't around at that time, there were still brands like Fashion Fair and Mac. And that was enough to get me started in terms of what are people currently wearing, and how can I use these shades to create something of my own and then replicate that in tights.
Yeah.
So I would actually go to beauty counters around London, and I would make sure that I would not go to the same ones, and I would collect little sample testers, to the point where I got the whole shade range, like of MAC and of Fashion Fair, and I would grade them all on a piece of paper. I also did a survey, so I would ask people about their current tights usage, and how they wear them and consume them, and then ask them what foundation that they will wear. So I had like a catalog of what everyone currently wears. Then I would speak to makeup artists at beauty counters, and they would say, okay, the trends are, these are the top selling shades. The type of woman that tends to buy this, she's more Asian, or she's kind of mixed race, or so I would get their intel.
Wow.
So with my survey, which was a lot of data points, and I would it sounds very scientific, but basically from this data, I got down to 5 dominant shades. And then that's the shades that I eventually sent to the manufacturer to try and replicate on tights.
That's incredible. And I love that you broke it down, right? Because I think the temptation is almost to run before you can crawl.
Mm.
And kind of leap to, right, let's look for manufacturers, let's look for, it's the same, it's similar to how I watch people do websites sometimes. Right,
Mm.
let's get a web designer. It's like, well, what the fuck are you putting on the website,
Yeah.
dude?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
what is the content? What's actually going on this thing? Oh, I don't know yet.
Yeah.
And so I love that you went even more basic than that, just to have a period of exploration, a period of what would this look like, a period where you don't have to worry about any of the technicalities or anything like that, that you would actually be able to say, well, if I take the principle, where do I start? Well, I'm going to need some shades. So what are those shades going to be, and what would they look like? And it's actually a very, very clever process you design by yourself with very little input.
Yeah. And so then I collected a lot of existing products and tested, just the functionality and what kind of features in the types that I liked of existing products. So by the time that I eventually got to the manufacturing stage, I was like, these are the shades that you need to replicate. And these are the products that I want it to look like. And I like this on that, and I like that on that. Can we make this a product? So it wasn't that I was going to them and saying, I don't know what I want. help me. It was
You
like,
didn't go to the manufacturer and went, right, so the thing is, I've got this idea. It's tights and many shades.
yeah, no. I presented them with exactly what I want, and the challenge then was for them to find a way to replicate or to take what was in my mind and produce that. Because I was quite clear of what I wanted at that point, because that took some time to get to that next stage.
I love that. I think there's a lot in there for women who are in business, be it service-based or be it
Mm-hmm.
product-based.
Mm.
The value of that thinking time, the value of that level of clarity, because often it's like it kind of, I'm going to coach who, coach them for what, coach them for,
Mm.
in what do they look like, what do they like, but that
Mm.
period of really kind of digging a bit deeper to have that much greater connection with, I mean, to the point where you kind of go, oh, the woman who wears this shade, like, I know what she's like. I know
Yeah,
what she's like because I've spoken to enough people,
yeah.
because I know that shade goes with this shade of makeup. And I've
Mm.
spoken to makeup
Yeah,
artists who've told
yeah,
me, that level of kind of
yeah.
granularity, I think a lot of people can often kind of skip through. It's like, let's go with it. But I love
Mm.
that you were drawn to playing in that bit and really kind of diving into it. How
Yeah.
long did that phase of the process take you?
So the whole kind of development process took 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So of course, I was working at the same time. So it wasn't like I was at a desk continuously for 3 years. I would dabble and dip in and dip out. But I thoroughly immersed myself in this development process. And as you said, um, was really at a granular level. So I knew, that, NC45 would be my second shade, and what that person looked like, and what other makeup brands that she would wear. And so I knew a lot about every single detail, and every single detail was important. And I guess going back to the whole why part, and the part about not seeing myself or other women who look like me represented, was that I thought I had a duty of care to care about the detail,
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of the time there was kind of this broad stroke that we are all the same, which is very not the truth.
Yeah. Is there anything you wish somebody told you when you started?
um I think whatever they would have told me,
You wouldn't have listened to? You're like, I am evolved enough to know I would have not have paid them any frigging attention anyway. Like, it wouldn't have mattered what they told me. Like, I was going down this road the way I love that about you. I love that, like, conviction in yourself and that inner belief in yourself to take something, to attach to an idea to the point that you really want to do it, and not just like, let me throw something out there, but really want to do it from a place of passion with a real purpose for a really specific result. And so fabulous. The link for Share Chemistry, by the way, is in the show notes. So do click and go and have a look out there. I mean, they be good. Mm-hmm. This girl, she was not, as you can tell, she was not playing when she created it. Not playing in the slightest. So the business is still going at the moment. Yeah, we're still up and running, and it's growing. And for those of you who are tonal, that's how I'm going to put it, who are tonal and cannot find hosiery in your own tone, please do go check out Share Chemistry. Incredible, incredible product. Like I said, it is doing for hosiery what Rihanna did for our faces. And if she's listening, she can get in touch. Don't steal the idea, Rihanna. It's happening already. But you can help. You can maybe wear them. We'd love that.
We would love that.
If you're listening, PM me. Anyhow, I digress. So with such an international background and so much passion behind diversity, but really passion behind visibility of diversity, because I think diversity has so many different layers to it and so many different ways in which people are addressing the challenge or how they view the challenge. And some people are saying it's about visibility, some people are saying it's about power or positions. But given that kind of background, your international background and building your business from scratch in a sector that arguably is quite challenging. Like anything in fashion, it's not an easy
Yeah.
arena to break into at all and
Yeah.
get any level of traction. What is it that you've seen in the women you've worked with and encountered over the years that you think really makes a woman powerful? What is that essence of a woman's power?
Yeah. Well, I would say it's being comfortable in your own skin, firstly. And secondly, just being able to write your own rules and not feeling the need to conform to anything or anyone. So I think that's what really makes us powerful. And I guess, you know, that's been the real seed of my whole journey, because, you know, even taking my mum, for example, who moved to Papua New Guinea, which is our point of connection, when she was 24, newly married with my dad. And that's when my sister was born, and then moving
Girl,
on.
my mum was like 24 too when she moved. She would
Crazy.
have been. She would have been 24 or 25 when she ended up in Papua New Guinea
Yeah,
with
that's
two little girls.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's it's mad. It's
Crazy.
mad. Like when I went this in December, and I went to the hospital where my sister was born, I turned to my mum and I'm like, "You're actually mad. You're crazy. You're crazy." But anyway, so just having the ambition, and moving without fear, or moving in spite of fear,
Mm-hmm.
has really been something that I admire and something that I see as very powerful. And I guess translating that into, you know, the brand, that's something that I've tried to incorporate. So I've named the products after traits that I admire, which is ambition, confidence, and radiance. So I think they're also powers that are allow a woman to be her most powerful self.
Love it. Do you know what? The more you talk, the more I'm thinking there is a real power in naivety. I mean, people, because I look back on my mum. My mum's like my rock. It sounds like our mothers are probably similar too. Maybe
Yeah,
they're sisters. I don't know.
yeah,
Maybe
yeah.
they're also sisters from different mothers. Like it's just a
It
little bit
sounds
crazy.
really, yeah, sounds really
But I
weird.
just kind of think you were living in a nice island. Life was good. And
Yeah,
you decided to move to the other side of the world with no family, age 24, to a country you've never heard of before with two
yeah,
little
yeah,
girls.
yeah.
What is wrong with you?
That's exactly my parents' story. Like exactly. On top of that, my mum was like 7 months pregnant.
Oh, my mother wasn't pregnant, but my father had no money when they moved. I think she gave him like $50 and he had like nothing. And he landed in Papua New Guinea and had such cultural shock. He would not tell my mother what it was like. He flew out before, and he just thought if
Oh,
he told her like how culturally different it was, she wouldn't come out.
yeah, probably she wouldn't have. Yeah,
I don't think she would. So sometimes not knowing, I mean, there's such a thing as so much information to put you off.
yeah,
And sometimes just kind of staying in a little bit of a bubble and not knowing is quite helpful. I think there's a balance because
yeah,
you kind of got to know yourself and enough to say, well, if you haven't got, if somebody told you exactly how difficult or what sort of challenges you were going to have or how
yeah.
long it was going to take,
Hmm.
would you have gone on that journey? It's like if somebody tells you it's going to take you 7 years to grow this business before it works. And by the way, there's going to be a period in there where you're going to struggle to put food on the table.
Mate,
Like,
mate,
would you do
mate.
it?
Of course not. No, you know, I value my sanity. If someone had told me literally exactly how hard, how long it would take, and the hurdles that I would come against, I couldn't possibly accept the challenge.
You'd have been like, nah, that's entrepreneurship though, ladies. So sometimes you're better off just one step at a time. Like literally like this little piece of the puzzle here right now excites me. So I'm just going to look at that. And anybody who wants to tell me about step 650, they can just take a flying leap because I'm not there yet.
It's
I'm going to worry about step 650 when I'm on step 654. Like when I'm completing that stage, then I'll worry about it. By then I would have had all of the benefit of the previous steps to be able to enable, because I think that's what we miss as well. It's that bit of all of the work we've done up until then prepares us for the challenge that we come up against.
Yeah.
And if we knew what all of the challenges were up front, we wouldn't do it. But the little knockbacks prepare you for the big knockback. The firing or hiring of people where it didn't work out prepares you for better hiring and growing that business. The investing in yourself, all of those little hurdles prepare you for the next time you have a bigger version of challenge. You look at it and you go, I've kind of seen this before. It just looks slightly different.
Yeah, definitely.
But I think if you hear about them from where you are right now, you'd be like, hell darn no. Just like our parents needed to not know what they were walking into.
Exactly.
Because if they did, they may have stayed at home.
They would have stayed at home.
And we wouldn't be talking, because they were a nice, beautiful islands. They were living in the Caribbean, having a time of their lives. They really did not need to do that, but it's, the journey develops, and there's always beautiful things that come from it. Absolutely. So we've spoken a lot about your idea of power, your journey, that kind of inner ambition and inner kind of drive that you have that moves you forward. But now I want to kind of dive a little bit deeper and a bit more specifically, because there's a lot that you kind of hinted at, and I'm like, Tahlia, I'm done with the hints. I won't get to the core of like what it is that allowed you to have the success you've had in business and in life.
Yeah.
If we were to take all of your life and all of your business successes and kind of boil them down and say, right, these 3 things have been core to having that need to the results that you've had.
Yeah.
What would those 3 things be? And their tools, strategies, ways of being, what would they be?
Yeah.
Let's start with the first one.
The first one I would say is endurance. And I guess that's not really an obvious trait to have, but I think it's highly important. And so I'm going to go take you back to when I was 5. And when I was 5, I started, living in Australia. It's a very sporty country. And so me and my brother, we started doing something called Little Athletics, which is like an Australia-wide, it's called Run. Well, the slogan is Run for Fun. And we got really involved in doing athletics, and I did every sport under the sun growing up. Every sport, basketball, softball, touch football. What else did I do? I didn't know, everything. And I thrived on that. But one of the things that I really excelled in was running. And I was a sprinter until university. So it's really part of who I am. And I still run, but it's a lot more of a leisurely thing, and it's become more long distance. But I think the core principles that I learned during that time, and let's just say it was 5 to 20, was how to win and how to lose, and how to keep going even through pain. Because, training, especially when for me, I ran for Australia and did a lot of kind of regional competitions and stuff. So it's not always fun. I know the whole slogan was Run for Fun, but it comes to a point when it's not always fun. You're not always winning. And you want to be better than you are, but it's going to take time. And so I think having that throughout my childhood, and I remember a lot of time, because my mum was one of those people who would be at every event. And I tried to be strong, especially when I had high expectations of myself and I didn't do as well as I wanted. And I would see my mom and I would burst into tears. I'll be able to hold it together until
you saw your mom.
And I would be so upset. But at the end of the day, you have to then, shake it off and then go back to the track the next day or then in the next few days, and then start again and appreciate what your strengths and your weaknesses, and work on that for the next event. And I am so grateful for my sporting childhood, because I do not think, I know for a fact that I wouldn't be able to be an entrepreneur if I didn't have that underpinning throughout my whole, and I mean whole, childhood. And I think being able to lose, and being able to lose gracefully, and then going back to the track to try again, I think is an essential skill for entrepreneurship.
It's so
And
true.
yeah, and I learned it on the track,
I
you
mean,
know.
it's so true that it's not always going to be beautiful. It's not always going to be fun either. There's some days you wake up and you think, oh, I don't want to do this crap. Like, I'm done. I don't want to do it. And that idea of, there's losing and then stopping because that loss now defines you, or
Mm.
there's losing and saying, well, it was one race.
Mm-hmm.
There's always another race. I'll come back tomorrow. I'll be
Yeah.
back next season.
Yeah.
There's another race in 2 weeks. And it's not any different with business. You can kind of take that knock and say, oh, that's it. That's the sign. Like, I'm done. Or you can take the knock and say, well, there's always another client. There's
Exactly.
always another level. There was something for me to learn and take from that. So that's incredibly powerful and a really good reminder. I love the analogy of sports and remembering that if sports people took the same approach that some entrepreneurs take, after one race, they'd just stop. After one injury, they'd
Yeah.
stop, but they keep coming back, understanding. And it's a lot of work behind the scenes to have those
Yeah.
moments that they have in front of the crowd where everybody's behind them. Everybody's a cheerleader when you're winning. Like,
Yeah.
seriously. A handful of
Honestly.
people be behind the scenes, like your
Yeah.
mom. Like, when you had that moment, you're like, I couldn't do it, mom. Like, my legs, I don't know what it was, I didn't sleep well enough, whatever it was.
Yeah.
So endurance is the first one. What would be the second one?
Creativity.
Mm.
So I guess I've been creative in many different ways throughout my life. And I just really enjoy the possibility of creating something from nothing and not having any restrictions or rules around it. So I guess, when I started my business and my earliest team, when I would present problems, I would be like, anything's possible, like anything's possible. And let's really just rip this apart. Let's rip this suggestion apart and just push it to the limits, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think I really got that through experience how different people live in different cultures experience life. So I think that's really come from just traveling, having access to the world, and so when I present something, it's not necessarily because I've seen it done before. I'm just like, but this is what I see the world to be, and I just haven't seen it in any way, so let's create that. So I think my creativity comes from not seeing the things that I want in the world, or not seeing it in the way that I think it should be, and wanting to celebrate the beauty that I see in everyday life.
That is super cool. And it's a very different take on creativity to say pushing, like it's almost like aggressive creativity. Dare I put it like that? Not the let me sit and create something small, but looking at something and going, that's what I want. Like, there's a gap right here and I know we can fill it. And let's explore the totality of how that might be possible. Let's not just sit here and look for one idea. Let's create lots of different ideas. Let's rip it apart. Let's understand why it is the way that it is. But it's like creativity and curiosity have a baby. It's curiosity. I don't know. Curiosity. That's what I'm going to call it. We've created a new word. So so there's endurance, there's curiosity, which is what I'm going to call it now, because English lit was never my strong point. I've been making up words since I was a kid, and I am not about to stop.
I love it.
And then what would be your third one?
Passion. Passion. And I guess this ties in with diversity as well. So I'm very passionate about what I'm passionate about. And at this point of time, it's really celebrating women of color, who we are, what we're capable of, and just redefining what beauty looks like. And as I've said, traveling around the world, I was always, well, putting it into context, starting off in Australia, and not seeing the representation was understandable. But going to London and not seeing that representation, it was kind of like, oh, that's weird. And then going to Brazil and not seeing that representation, because the image that I had of Brazil was Black Brazil.
Yeah.
But where I landed was white Brazil. And so it was kind of that story being replicated again, and just being like, how am I not seeing myself here? Because this is why I'm here. And then having that same experience replicated in New York, when I thought, if any place is going to be celebrating us, it's going to be there, and then not having that happen. So I guess it became kind of something that I became very passionate about, in terms of, well, if someone's not going to celebrate me, I'm going to have to do that for myself and for ourselves, because we can't wait for someone to give us permission to do that. So in this whole brand, it's kind of a little kind, it's not rebellious, but it's using my power to be like, actually, I'm not going to wait for you, and I'm not going to wait for anyone's permission to say that actually I'm beautiful, and actually I deserve a product, and actually I want you and I to be considered, and I want you to feel the detail of my consideration. So I'm very passionate about just what it means to be a woman of color, and kind of spread that to the world, and break down all these stereotypes of, the angry Black women, and all these kind of random tropes that exist in the world, which, to a small degree, there is some truth, but to the whole, race, and even if we bring it broad to women of color, I think it's very unfair. And my personal experience of these women have been, these international women of the world who are really trailblazers and doing amazing things, in big and small ways. And so I think it's just important, in whatever field we're in, to really challenge the stereotype, and bring it back to, reclaim the ownership of sharing that narrative, and defining our own narrative. So that's what passion means to me.
Girl, you got it in abundance. There was so much in there. You speak about being a bit of a rebel. Well, if there's something in it, like I interviewed Michelle Nazer. You have to go back and watch her interview.
Okay.
And she's very much about having that thing that drives you, that the change that you want to be, and owning it. And you're like truly like an embodiment of her process. I say that as if I've been through the process end to end. I had a little snippet of it. Very good. So and this idea of not waiting outside of yourself for it to be seen, but being the change you want to see in the world. There's a huge amount to be said for that. Tahlia, my goodness, girl, we've gone deep. We've gone all around the houses. We've talked about all kinds of things. I'm convinced that, we're non-blood sisters of some description, living double ganger lives. It's like ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's actually ridiculous. I did sport too. It's crazy.
Yeah.
But what I want to understand from you, there'll be people listening who want some sheer chemistry tights, click the link. But secondly, maybe thinking I love the way that this woman's speaking. I'd love to have her come out and talk. I need to be connected in her world in some way, because that perspective is really resonating with me. What is the best way for people to get in touch with you?
So you can email me. So my email is Tahlia, which is Tahlia @sheerchemistry.com. Or else you can just go to the Sheer Chemistry website, and there's a contact us page, and getting in touch that way.
Boom, all in the notes. Tahlia, we discussed so much today that I would really love you to kind of summarize. What would you like people to kind of be left with today? If there's just one thing they can take from this discussion. I mean, we talked about diversity, we talked about endurance, we talked about naivety, we talked about ambition. I mean, there's a lot that was covered today.
Yeah.
How would you condense that? What would you like to leave people with today?
Ooh, that's hard, especially because we have covered so much. But I would say, um, just don't wait to be given permission to do what your heart really truly desires. And I think we've all got something inside of us like yelling at us saying you need to do that, and you know what it is, you definitely know what it is. But just don't wait for permission. You are powerful already. You have everything that you require to execute and be successful. And I think just own your own story and your own narrative, because there's so much strength in that. And you will be surprised at how your naivety will be a blessing.
Own your own strength and your own power. And your naivety, my darlings, is a blessing. We've been talking with Tahlia Gray, and you've been listening to the Lovelda Show Women of Power podcast. We've come to the end of today's episode, my gorgeous, but don't worry, there will be another one hitting the airwaves ever so soon. Make sure that you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out, because we'd love to see you there. Until next time, my darlings, ciao, chicas.